How's it going, Rick?
But awesome. You
Awesome.
know, I tell you the truth, but you'd only get jealous and
I
angry and
would.
upset. And
That's me. Welcome, everybody, back to Carl and Rick Talk Risk. We've been away for what? Only a week, I think. Enjoying the summer, the lovely Dutch 20-degree summer, which I kind of like. Um,
I'm envious as all heck because, our Humidex reading is, beyond the pale here. But anyhow,
yeah, yeah. I hope it comes down soon. Um, Rick, as everybody knows who's ever watched our podcast, we're big Formula One fans.
I'm just
And
big, but yeah,
well,
I'm a
yeah,
Formula One fan too. But anyhow,
yeah. And the season just heated up. I mean, the first half of the season to me was the biggest snooze fest in years. Max Verstappen winning everything in sight, and all of a sudden, things have flipped on their head. And McLaren is back at the front after God knows how long. You've got Mercedes up there. McLaren uses a Mercedes engine, but they're faster than Mercedes. Maybe you can explain that one. I don't know. And Ferrari's right up there. And Max is furious. His temperament is boiling over. He was cussing out his engineer on the radio. There's all kinds of great YouTube clips putting them together and just showing Max losing his cool. And we know what happened in the race. It got so bad that he smashed into Lewis Hamilton, his old-time rival, and I think finished the race behind him. Can't quite. Yeah, he did. So things are exciting. I mean, this is great for Formula One. I'm loving it. You don't know who's going to win, and that's how sports should be. So I'm really enjoying it. But it got us thinking, what are we going to record about? And the dangers of being on top, because arguably some part of Red Bull and Max and their sudden downfall is complacency, right? They've been on top for so long. Have they prepared for other teams coming and competing with them again? Have they been working hard? Have they been putting their shoulder to the what, the axle, trying to make things work? So that's the topic for today. Um, what do you think? Have they been complacent? Have they been?
well. Before we
Yeah,
get to that, I also think first off, it's there's a very interesting mirror image of this in terms of uh, the situation that McLaren found themselves in, where everything was going too right.
yeah,
Um, Also, before we get to Max flipping out, I'm going to take a counter view here. Perhaps people who get terribly upset, and people who know me from way back before I became a academic and incredibly mellowed, which of course is a shock to any of my academic colleagues to think that I am a mere shadow of what I used to be in terms of spirit. Um, First off, for context, I would be incredibly disappointed if Max wasn't ticked off.
hmm
Okay, if Max wasn't livid, I would be very disappointed. Not that I'm necessarily a Max fan per se. I'm not. I'm not a Max hater. But I'll compare him with Checo, who nothing is going right and
yeah,
says, "Oh, another bad day at the track. I'm more committed than ever." And he says, "I'm
yeah,
more committed than ever." With a conviction that, you know, makes me think of my kids when they were teenagers. Yeah, Dad, I'll get around to it. Okay.
yeah,
Um, and that's why Checo is where Checo is at the,
yeah,
basically massively underperforming, in my opinion.
yeah,
I don't think there's ever been a difference between the top driver, as large a difference between the top driver of a team and the second driver of a team as there is with Red Bull. I don't think there's ever been
yeah,
that dispersion Yes, someone will probably fact check me on that and say, Nason's an idiot, but we all know I'm an idiot to begin with. Um, but that, if Max wasn't boiling over, he wouldn't be a champion.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for those of us who aren't at that level of sport to point fingers and criticize.
Yeah.
Was it complacency? I'm not so sure it was complacency. If you follow Horner's comments throughout the last 3 years of dominance, uh, he always reminded me of Andy Grove, who wrote the former CEO. Help me out here.
I don't know.
Intel, Motorola, I think Intel. Boy, I'm having a senior moment here, folks. But he wrote the book "Only the Paranoid Survive," in which he said that when you're on top, that's the time to be most concerned. And I want to come back to a moment in my own career where this struck home and gave me a moment of panic.
Mm.
So Christian Horner, I think, if you listen to his comments throughout the last 3 years of dominance, was very aware of the risk of complacency. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure that the rest of the team was. And that goes for the drivers themselves. So, again, take Checo. Last year, you could bank on Max being one and Checo being two, with the exception of if Max had a tire failure or something and had to drop out of the race, in which Checo was one.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I can only relate things to, what I've done in the past. I remember one night I was out walking the dog, in my former life, and I looked around at my surroundings and I realized, oh my goodness, I've achieved almost everything I set out to achieve.
Mm.
And I literally became terrified on that walk because what do I do now? What do I do next?
Yeah.
And I think that when everything is going right, it's very hard to say that. But or it might be very easy to say that, but it's very hard to implement something different because people don't want to break what's working.
Yeah.
But if complexity theory teaches us anything, is that's the time you most have to break things.
Yeah.
And that's the time that you most need risk management. But when things are going great, everyone's saying, what that do we need a risk department for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's when leaders are not listening to, risk managers, right? I mean, let's just keep things going. I mean, let's not break the good roll.
Let's look at the flip side of McLaren last week, finishing 1-2 and having to do the swap with Lando Norris for Piastri. And, the commentators made a lot of, Lando's reluctance to shift. Well, if I was head of McLaren, if Lando didn't put up a fuss, I would have fired him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't get to that level and stay at that level unless every molecule in your body is telling you when.
Yeah, yeah. Especially in the heat of a race, right? I mean, before a race, when you're more objective, fine. Yeah, of course I'll switch with him if the time comes. But in the heat of a race, I mean, you only have one objective, to win. And it's difficult to alter your plans.
Yeah. I mean, when I went to racing school, I remember, even though it was racing school and even though we weren't really racing per se, I remember just sitting in the car, my heartbeat was off the charts.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, the adrenaline was, uh, going so much. You know, uh, there wasn't enough Red Bull in the world to get my heart rate to that level, or my adrenaline to that level, or my senses to that level. And so I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
And then, and yes, I realize they're professionals. Yes, I realize that they're used to it. Yes, I realize that they've done it a gazillion times.
Yeah.
But being a champion is doing it a gazillion times and still having the massive adrenaline.
Yeah.
The people who have the talent and have done it a gazillion times, yeah, they win in FP2 and whatnot and do well for a season, one or two seasons of F1, but then you never hear them again.
Yeah. Yeah. But
And that's
Rick,
true in any profession,
yeah.
business and risk management, especially.
Yeah. I want to put you in a scenario. The times are good
Most
at
people
Red.
want to put me in a box. Damn.
Yeah. Okay.
That has no air holes, that is completely
Yeah.
unseated. But anyhow, put me in a scenario.
This one's better. Come on. Okay. Times are good. It's early 2024 in the Red Bull garage. Things are going well. Put your risk hat on. It's difficult to get hurt in those situations and be the one that's saying to Horner and Max, "Hey, we've got to do something different." How do you get that message across?
Um, one of the things I try to do personally, again, people who know me will laugh because, I'm a fat, lazy slub, but you start racing yourself. Okay. It all comes down to being into continuous improvement.
Mm,
Um, the second thing is to realize that the people around you aren't ninnies.
mm,
Okay. Uh, Although you have the advantage today, they're going to catch up to you. And, that
yeah,
doesn't matter whether it's F1 or academia or business or whatever.
yeah,
That's the whole part of complexity that people miss. Is complexity is when agents can interact with each other, i.e., see that, he's beating us by 63 seconds,
yeah,
and they can adapt. And the world is always adapting. And no matter
yep,
how good you've got it, if you don't realize that you've got to adapt as well, then you're there. Now, telling that story is and selling that story is very, very, very difficult, but it's a sale that needs to be done.
yeah.
Uh, there's a fantastic, and I'm going to totally misquote this, but I love the movie Pat. Okay. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's basically, one of these big budget Hollywood movies of the era, uh, more or less document a patent. And, when he's at his height, he's there with his, aide de camp, and he tells the story of the Roman leader, like of the Roman leaders, and I
Mm,
can't remember the specifics of it. But when they would come back from a massive victory and have the parade through town, the leader always had someone following behind them saying, "You are mortal, you are mortal, you are mortal."
mm-hmm.
To always remind them that no matter how big the crowds are, and no matter how big the current victory that they're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
that there's always a battle tomorrow that they can lose.
Yeah,
And it comes back to Andy Grove in his book, Only the Paranoid Survive, or his phrase, Only the Paranoid Survive. And it's true again and again. And it's understanding your history. It's having a competition. And if you don't have competition, then making yourself the competition, i.e., continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Um, and, complacency actually might be one of the biggest risks of all,
Yeah.
but you never see it in any of the risk courses or risk books or
Yeah.
risk programs, do you?
Yeah. No, exactly. You never see anything about it. And it's not the sort of thing that happens very slowly and you can sort of write the course, right? As we saw in the season, things were going great and then they weren't. And it was a cliff.
It's
So
not always a cliff. Sometimes,
true.
sometimes it's the proverbial frog in the pot of water that's being
Yeah.
heated up.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to get at is if you if you wait, it's often too late to do anything about. It is really the sort of thing that, like you're saying, you need to be ahead of it. You need to be preparing for it ahead of time. And I don't know, designating a devil's advocate to be in the room and say, listen, we've been doing things this way for a while. What about this? Somebody to shake things up, get rid of groupthink, and make you uncomfortable. You know, so I'm reminded of sessions like tabletop exercises, which I don't know if they happen in other industries, maybe in like security, national security and stuff, they probably do. I think that's where it comes from originally, that somebody is going to walk everybody through an exercise and make up a narrative. It's almost like Dungeons and Dragons, right? And have everybody play their role that they currently fill. But like this, we're having a cyber attack, and now this happens, and now North Korea decides to join in. What do you do? That's I always enjoyed those exercises at banks. They really take you out of your comfort zone and get you thinking differently. So yeah, maybe Red
Well,
Bull needs one of them.
one of the things that we do at Dalhousie in our MBA program, I expect a check from Dalhousie for the free publicity here, or not free publicity, is I run what's called an unstructured simulation. I don't know if I've ever described this to you,
No.
but it's a 2 or 3 day exercise in our MBA program. And when I first proposed this, everyone laughed, like, that is the dumbest thing that we've ever heard.
That's
It simply won't work. And of course, simulations in business schools are as old as business schools.
yeah.
But the unstructured simulation is very different. And so I'll just explain how I structured it for the first one. It was 3 days. I stood at the front of the room with 10 envelopes, and students self-formed themselves into groups, into 10 groups. And predictable for MBAs, they kind of showed their caste system. So, all the dean's teamers formed a group, and, all the slugs who couldn't get in a group formed their own group, and, the caste system all the way down.
Mm.
And they randomly picked an envelope. So one envelope told them what their breakout room was and that they were to play the role of Martha Billis. And there's rumor in the market that you're thinking of selling your shares. Now, no one knew who Martha Billis was. I'll explain. No one on this podcast will know. The next group was told that they were the management group for Walmart Canada. Another group got an envelope that said that they were the management team for the Canadian Tire, which is a franchise kind of hardware slash automotive supply, and now work clothing chain in Canada, which is run by dealers. And they were told that they were the management team of the dealership. And those three teams were told that there's a rumor in the market that Martha Billis was thinking of selling their shares. And each group was told what their breakout room was. And 7 groups got that they were an investment banking team. Okay. And they're told what their breakout room was. And they're told that their managing director, as he left for the weekend, told them that there's a rumor in the market that Martha Billis is thinking of selling her shares. you better get a piece of that action.
Right.
Now, these are MBA students. They don't know who Martha Billis is. They don't really know what an investment banker does or could possibly do. And they're given zero other instruction.
Okay.
Okay, so Martha Billis is basically the woman who owns all of the voting, or virtually all the voting shares of Canadian Tire. So she sells
Okay.
her shares, Canadian Tire is going to have a new owner. Now you'll
Okay.
notice that there are 7 investment banks, but only 3 potential clients.
Okay. Yeah.
All of a sudden, people figured out, oh, and they go in normal situation. Oh, I'll be the investment banker for Martha Bills, but they realize that there's 4 other bankers already lining up to see the Martha Billis team, and all of a sudden it hits the fan, right?
Right. Right.
And what happened was, for the 3 investment banks that didn't get an assignment, they had to pitch to me and pretend that I was another company. So they had to come up with another company that potentially could take over Canadian Tire.
Okay.
And soon, no one knew who next was going to come into this competitive game. And literally, the students stayed up for almost the entire 72 hours of this simulation. It got so intense. It went in ways that no one could ever imagine.
Right.
And that's the world of business. That's the world of
Yeah.
complexity. That's the world of risk management. And
Yeah.
when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think that you're at the top of the game, that life is going to throw you curveballs. And so
Yeah.
you need to take being at the top of the game, you need that luxury to do experiments, to
Yeah.
develop
Yeah.
the new skills,
Yeah.
to uh, have the cognitive diversity to say what might shake us off.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. And instilling some creativity and authority in the people below you as the leader, right? Because, you can be the smartest person in the team. You can't come up with the stuff by yourself. You've got to be
Oh,
challenged from
absolutely
below.
not.
So, yeah.
Now, having said that, I think everyone has a personal responsibility to become as cognitively diverse as they can.
Yeah.
But a cognitively diverse group will trump the smartest individual
Yeah.
each and every time. By the way, just getting back to while we're talking about quote unquote intelligence, which I'll put in quotation marks.
Yeah.
I've run this simulation, albeit every year it changes. They never know what's happening. Generally, it's something that's current in the market. Uh, the teams always self-form according to this cast. The cast system almost always the top casts almost always finish near the bottom
Huh.
because they try to do things according to the textbook. And in times of change, in times of volatility, in times of complexity, doing things by the textbook is almost always the last thing that you want to do.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see what the
Why,
rest
are
of
we
this.
stopped?
No, that's great. My MBA program was definitely not as creative as that. That's what I really like about that is the way you said, by the way, the director's away for the weekend. You got to figure it out. Who's going to be the informal leader? Who's going to, because you also need some kind of structure, right?
Yep. No, but here's the point. Here's the point: is the students form the structure
Yes,
in ways that none of us
that's it. That's
could
it.
have foreseen.
Because you want that tension, right? You want, yeah, this complete diversity of thought and ideas and creativity, but then how do you get it done? How do you bring it all together and plan and action on it? So fascinating. Okay. All right, and yeah, I think let's stop there. This is a pretty long one for us. Let's see what the rest of the Formula One season holds. It's going to be fascinating, especially with all the team changes next year. Hamilton moving, even though Mercedes is up their game. Anyway, Rick, it's been great talking as always. Until next time, it's been Carl and Rick talk risk and some Formula One.
Have fun, everyone. Go kick
Cheers.
five. Go break some things. Go break some patterns.
That's right.